Okie dokie.
All right. Well, happy 4th of July. Tonight, Lex and I are having burgers and fries. So you may also hear some fireworks going off in the background. It did rain today, so maybe not. This is our first time doing this kind of style, kind of video. We're trying to really, Lex and I have a lot of topics and discussions all the time when we're hanging out. And we always have these kind of discussions all the time with a lot of our other couple friends as well. And so I thought it'd be a really cool idea for us to kind of invite you to our dinner so you can just hear the conversations that we have, talk about the things that we talk about. We've made a jar full of topics because, like, every time you hang out with a group of friends, sometimes you have no idea what you're going to talk about. Sometimes the most randomest stuff. Sometimes it's your regular talk of the mill kind of things. How's work? How's the house? How's the kids? How's the dog? But we mix it up. So I have no idea what I'm going to pick out. We'll take turns doing this. Again, this is our first time, so a little grace. But we'll start it out. I apologize if you are directly watching us while we eat. I never watch myself eat, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, let's do that first pick. Let's do it. Don't really have a choice to pick. It's kind of like cram.
It's a small jar.
I don't even know how many ideas we put in here. We're just naming them off one day.
A lot. I ripped a lot of paper. Also, these fries, really good.
Good.
Kinder's fries. Not a lot comes in a bag, but they're good. They are good.
And our first topic is renting.
Renting.
How's this going to go? We're just going to talk about our general thoughts about renting, our experiences with renting. Lex and I have rented a lot through college. And we rented when we moved down here to Texas, up from the Midwest. And so we have a lot of different experience when it comes to renting as a whole. So, Lex, what do you think about renting? Well, what's your experience with renting so far? Out of all times, like, you've been the person in the house.
So I would say, let's see, we had San Marin, Jewett, East Madison, Water Street. So I would say I rented at 4 places in my life. And I would definitely say, also excuse our dog, Gizmo gets very adventurous when we eat because he's looking for scraps. So if you hear a little clickety clack, that's Gizmo. I would say leasing or renting really gets impacted by like your landlord, I would say. So like True. Gabe and I, when we were, this will forever haunt me, when we were in college, it was our last house, Jewett, and one of our roommates totally disregarded the lease by maxing out the amount of pets you could have. And she let one of her cats that was approved out into the outside. It was an indoor cat previously. So, of course, like, they did not have any flea protection or anything. Let the cat back in, and then the cat proceeded to give us fleas. And so we battled fleas for the whole month of August almost, right before school started. And it was so stressful, so expensive. We had to like document like everything that we paid for to help fight the fleas. And then we had to like try to communicate with our roommate, who at this point was very uncooperative. And then our landlords, they kind of were sympathetic to us because like we had fleas and we had to like find alternate housing and like pay for all this stuff. And they reimbursed us a little bit, but they ultimately, like, I feel like weren't super helpful because they're like, well, you
caused it, you got to fix it.
Yeah, she's your roommate, you picked her. And I was just like, well, and this roommate I had roomed with in another one, in another renting place, and she was fine. So it's like very much all over the place. But I think like people rent to have less of a liability on them because being a homeowner, as we know, because we've been doing this for a couple of years now, it definitely is more expensive than renting. However, you have to deal with so many other variables when you rent, and especially when a crisis happens, you expect your landlord to step in because that's the liability that they are taking on. And a lot of the time, I feel like landlords or apartment complexes don't do that. So I think renting can be just as big of a gamble as home ownership.
Yeah, no. Yeah, my experience definitely with renting. So I didn't start renting until my junior year of college. First 2 years, I was, in and out of the dorms, getting used to being with roommates, taking care of the bathrooms and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, my first time I like rented, well, not first time rented. So I came from a family too that like we rented. Like a good part of like my high school and middle school years, like we were a family that lived in a house that we rented out. It was an apartment, and so that was, I'm not sure if you knew that, but like all the time, like we would bounce around, and luckily we like knew our landlords. Like my mom knew them from work, and so it was like a pretty chill, and it was a nice neighborhood. Um, but definitely like I saw what that was like because I was like we were told to like keep maintain it as if it's your own house. You know what I mean? Especially for like houses, and that way you'll be a great person for the landlord. They'll want to keep you for multiple years. They won't go crazy like raising your rent. You build that relationship. But for me, when I started like being inside of rents and leasing, it was in a fraternity house. And so we had someone who owned the fraternity house, wasn't one of us or like our organization, and they rented it out to us. And so that was a weird apartment complex because it was essentially three homes put into one. And so I had 11 other roommates who were also my fraternity brothers. And also, we're all college guys. So, we're all learning. There's a spectrum of humans in this house. And that was like put into the deep end, very end, because like we had our own cleaning schedules. We had fines if you didn't do your cleaning schedules. We had people who weren't living there because we were the fraternity house. So other brothers would come over and hang out, do their homework, be whatever. And the cool thing though is, like I said, three sort of houses. So you had our ground floor, the top floor, which had his own bathroom and sink. Bottom floor had his own kitchen, bathroom, and then we had a apartment above our garage, which was almost entirely separate. You'll like the brothers who lived up there were in their own world essentially, but they had the same kind of policies. Um, and so eventually, though, I moved into Bradford, and what we say are these names are the streets that we lived on. That's how we kind of like remembered what they were. So the big
Keep it
blue
all
house,
straight in the
yeah,
head.
the big corner White House. And that one I had more fraternity brothers, but there was only six of us. And that one became kind of the pseudo fraternity house for a lot of brothers. So we kind of housed a lot of people too. Yeah, I was a senior by then, and so it was closer to campus, closer to downtown, and so it was a halfway point for a lot of brothers, and that was a great way because we were able to take care of the younger guys and be able to hang out and do our work. But Lex and I didn't start running together until you mentioned that Jewett. I had graduated, Lex still had school, so I worked on campus while I was getting my graduate, and Lex was still going to school. And so yeah, we had that incident, and that was it was a shock. I was not ready for that. It was a whole different. I had fraternity brothers who just didn't go along, but this was something new. And on top of that, the cat also had kittens. And
Yeah,
so
her other cat.
at one point we had 10 cats in that house, which was I grew up with cats. I love cats. I'm more of a dog person now that I'm older, but um, yeah, that was an experience. But yeah, then we moved down to Texas, and that wedding was like I think like a whole step for like it was leaps because you're in a like our college town. They knew we were college kids. Rent was like 250, maybe like an expensive apartment like for your lease was like 320, 350. You're like, wow, you're kind of paying on the high end for like stuff. Usually that include utilities or other things, but like there are some apartments you only pay like 240. You know what I mean? But like you get what you get. You're a house that may not have AC or heat. It might be a little damaged. You know what I mean? Like it's not all
Mm-hmm.
new appliances. But if it's a college town, you're getting experience. No, when we went to our San Marin and we moved down here to Texas, which was a whole experience we could tell you about another video because it happened like 2 weeks before the pandemic. We both graduated.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have full time like our career jobs yet. We just found what we could get at the time. And
Yeah.
yeah, we realizing that like, okay, this rent's going to be about $1,400 for just the two of us. It was a two bed, two bath, ground floor, um, and so it was a shock because we had other things to worry about now. It was very I feel like we got thrown like into the system with like all the other like renters. Like, all right, sign this, figure this out, figure that out. You know what I mean? Like, make sure you do this. You have the maintenance orders. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah, I think, well, and that's the other thing too, is like apartment complexes are their own beast. Because like we up into, like Gabe said, like we had rented in our college town, at least. I cannot speak for all college towns, but in our college town, what a lot of people did, there was a few apartment complexes, but they were pretty well removed from campus, so I wouldn't say they're people's first choices. There was like one fancy one that everyone wanted to get into, like Washington Heights or something, and that was like $500 a person, which honestly, with my budget back in college, I could not imagine 500, because what we a lot of people would do is these people would rent their houses out near college campus. And so like Gabe said, like you would have a whole house, and like think about it, like a mortgage is usually around like anywhere from like 1,000 to like $2,000 in like a small like rural town. And so like you would have four people for, yeah, usually four people split that. And so you're roughly looking at like 250, $300 a person, which was a little bit more, I feel like, budget friendly, um, in comparison to some of the apartment units. But again, you don't get like any amenities. You are lucky if you got your lawn mowed or you got your driveway plowed, because we were up in Wisconsin at the time, like, and so winters, a real thing up there. And so like it's one of those things where you don't really get any added luxury to your price. And so then Gabe and I came to Austin, and we were like, first off, like Gabe said, we were just figuring it out. We knew where we wanted to be, but we didn't really have any of the things to be there. We just were going to make it work. And we found this apartment, and it was 1,300, like you said, 13 to 1,400 with everything included. And that's when they start to like try to make you feel better about the fact that you're paying over $1,000. Like everyone knows, like when you're in your early 20s, like when you see money like with a comma in it, that's kind of crazy. Like, because you're like, what is this? Like you're making $20, $40 stretch in college, and then now you have to come up with a whole ass comma just to live. And like the apartments, it'll get you because you'll rent, and they'll be like, well, your rent is so high because you have access to a pool. You're gonna have pest control in it. You're gonna have like your water included. Like you're gonna have an on-site maintenance team. And so they give you this whole list of amenities, but the quality of those amenities is not that great. Like for example, we have Gizmo. Um, Gabe didn't let me adopt Gizmo until he said we had big boy paychecks to pay for Gizmo, so he waited a little bit. But when we got Gizmo, we got him from a shelter, and he doesn't really like others, whether that be people, especially dogs, toddlers, really just people that move very fast. Gizmo's not a fan. And so our place had a dog park. And we're like, oh, that's a cool amenity, a dog park. Yeah, then you get to the dog park and you realize the fence barely there, the gates barely closed. Like Gizmo at full speed, he knocked that gate open so many times. It was not well like groomed in terms of landscaping or anything, but yet it was listed as an amenity with renting. And so I think that's sometimes like the sucky part is you pay a lot of money and for all these amenities and these added services, but you find that those services are lacking, and then you're like, well, what am I paying for? Like, so I don't know. I think that was what the gripe that always got me for renting, because I'm just like, well, you need everyone's wondering why something's like a certain amount of money. Like, you mean like think about like eggs. Like eggs are going to be kind of expensive because there's like bird illnesses that can take out like the stock. You got like reduced farmers that don't like can't keep up with like the supply and demand. Like you could understand kind of like where eggs get their pricing from. But I, for the life of me, cannot understand how an apartment complex, like, and I've grown up in such a small town, like, so big cities to me are quite the adjustment. But like the fact that like you can just put a price tag on something and just know that people are going to pay it and there's like no justifiable reason as to why that is that price tag, I feel like that is our apartment. And like the best example, or like renting, is like what ended up spurring Gabe and I to get this house is when it came time to renew your lease, which also with apartment complexes, they ding you if you want to be there for a year. So like a lot of them do like 15 months instead of 12, or they'll do like a case by case basis, which the pricing is just wild on that. But our apartment, which again we rented for, I would say about 1,400 with like all the added little fees, like I said, pest control, trash, um, apartment complex fees, because there are fees, which is just crazy to all of that. But was 1,400. It was 2 bedrooms, 2 bath. It was a decent sized apartment and it had laundry. But it wasn't getting any renovations. It wasn't, none of the amenities were changing, none of that. And so when we went to go renew our lease after the 15 months, they wanted close to $1,900 base fee for the apartment. So again, that wouldn't include your extra fees, your pest control, your trash. It was just $1,900 for the exact same space. And I was just like, that's crazy. Like, you're not even gonna come in here and paint. You're not even gonna like, you're not gonna do anything, or like give us like a better, like a more cleaned pool, because like the pool would be dirty every so often, and we like people wouldn't be able to use that amenity. The gym, all these amenities weren't that great. I'm like, you're gonna just raise the price on that? And I'm like, no. And then at that point, Gabe and I just gambled, and I was just like, well, we could try to get an asset with the house, and we got lucky. And
Well, mortgage at that point is like just as much, if not like the same. And we know like the only thing that really impacts your mortgage is if property taxes go up and down. But I mean, at that point, you're a little more like adjusted, I think, and like prepare for that. Unless you live in a really volatile area for property taxes. But yeah, no, I think that's what killed me with the apartment is that you could be like okay, like fine wise, like budget wise, you know what I mean, like with the apartments. But like if you get in a situation where the landlord, they tell you like, hey, by the way, we're gonna raise it, by a fair amount. You know what I mean? Like that you makes you think like what the reason for that is. Maybe because they're losing money. You know what I mean? Like they need to raise it somehow with everything that's going on, or like they just know that people are going to pay for it. And then we moved down to Austin. We came down when, I guess you could say, when the great like migration happened, like down to Texas too, and like there was just a lot of people coming into Austin. We came during the pandemic too, so like things were uncertain, and by the time our lease was ending, it was somewhere in 2021. So like things were starting to lift a little bit. The world's getting just a little closer to being what it kind of was beforehand. You know what I mean? And so at that point too, we were like, do we want to play this gamble of like, okay, we couldn't afford to be in that one, or we didn't want to like put our money into renting, like, do we want to play the game of, okay, we have to find a new apartment? You know what I mean? But like where we were was such a good place at the time, you know what I mean, with her, where Lex worked, and I was remote by the time we were getting at the end of our lease. You know what I mean? Like it was, do you play that game? And so I think that's where we go like back. I think we like got out at like the right time, just because like I hear like how much things are like leasing now. I was like, you're paying more than like some mortgages, and like us, like our mortgage is probably a little higher just because like we didn't do a crazy big down payment. We have PMI because we're new. We had a USDA loan. You know what I mean? Like we're in a unique situation, but like it's crazy. And that's the thing I'll give renters. You know what I mean? There are the pros to that. Because for some places, like owning a house, but you want to be in that area, is next to impossible. You know what I mean? Especially in today's world, you know what I mean? Like owning homes in some areas. Like I'm originally from Chicago, and I couldn't imagine trying to own a home like somewhere in the city. You know what I mean? Like, and it depends. You got location, you got taxes, you got all those kind of factors. You know what I mean? And trying to find a home there, like I'd rather just, if I want to be in the city and be near Chicago, I'm just gonna rent. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be so much easier. I don't have to worry about XYZ. Living in near cities is really kind of expensive, depending on which one you're in too. You know what I mean? Depending on what city you're in. You know what I mean? Like when we were at the apartment at San Marin, I was working remote. Lex could theoretically walk to her job. You know what I mean? Like keyword theoretically.
Sorry.
I walk to
That's
her job
mm,
sometimes, just to say hi.
he did. He did.
I
He
would
would
say
walk to
hi
the
and
gas station down the street.
yeah. So I think there's
Wild.
definitely like pros. Like I think renting definitely serves its benefit. You know what I mean? And I think like I mentioned before, I grew up in a house that was rented, and that wasn't in the city. That was in a regular neighborhood outside of Chicago. It was great. You know what I mean? It would serve my family. You know, because we couldn't really afford getting a house and like maintaining it. And my mom got in it knowing that me and my sister eventually would leave the nest and go to college. So she was able to move to a smaller apartment without having to worry about maintaining a giant house all by
Trying to
herself
sell it.
or sell it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's important too. If you have a good relationship with your landlord and vice versa, if your landlord with your leaser, that's a long term like
Mm-hmm.
win-win for both parties. Now, if one party is not great, that's going to be a long, especially what state you live in with like the landlord laws and leasing laws. You know what I mean? Like that could be a real pickle.
That's why I think like renting gets made like it's a make or break thing about your landlord. It really is. Cause like while you list some positives, all I can think about is negative experiences of renting. Cause like, and maybe we're bad, like maybe we don't have enough expertise to judge because Platteville renting was so like easy, and then like our home ownership I think for the most part has been pretty easy in terms of like how we got the house. Like we got extremely lucky. But I'm just like, another thing that like they don't prepare you for with apartments is like all the fees just to get an apartment, like,
Really kind of gatekeep it.
and the fees afterwards. So like you have, most places you have to pay an application fee, which is anywhere from like 250 to like $300 for an application fee just to fill it out, just to be like, hey, I'm interested in your apartment. And then there's just like, there was like one other fee for San Marin that was like $75 for something. And then you have to give them a whole month's of rent. And like, again, that's not too uncommon. We had to do that in college. But when you're splitting it with your roommates, like that rent piece is like
Coming
200
up
to
with 250 bucks is
$300.
a lot easier.
Yeah, versus coming up with a whole $1,000, like it's kind of, it's can be difficult because especially like if you end your lease, like Gabe said, and even if we wanted to shop around, you would have to come up with all that money again to go to a whole other place and start that process all over again before you even can think about getting your security deposit and stuff back. And like that's crazy. And then like if you have pets, which like we had Gizmo, and so
Yep.
not the
Pet
whole
rat.
not the whole lease, but for part of it, and so you had to pay an upfront 50 or $500 non-refundable deposit, which let me tell you, absolutely baloney. Absolutely baloney, and I'll tell you why. I will tell you why. And then it's an additional pet rent month, like $15, I think.
That was 75.
Was it? I don't think it's that much. I think it's 15. We also kind of lied because Gizmo's a mixed breed, and part of that breed is pit bull, but he's also a retriever, and pit bulls were banned from our apartment complex, which again, that's a whole other conversation that irritates me, but that's whatever. And so we just said he was just a retriever. We just lied about his pit bull thing, and what the apartment complex doesn't know won't hurt them. But what makes me mad about the non-refundable thing is, so Gizmo had an accident in one of the bedrooms, and so after we moved out, which I find so funny, after we moved out, they decided to refurnish our apartment to get replace the carpets or whatever, because the carpets were right at the end of their like whatever the time frame for the apartment is, and they decided to withhold part of our security deposit, like our initial deposit, because of that accident. And I was just like, was the $500 you took from us that was non-refundable not enough to cover that pet incident? Like the rest of the apartment was absolutely fine. You took a $500 deposit for this dog. Why is that not getting taken out of that pot instead of our security deposit pot? And again, you couldn't tell on the surface that Gizmo had this accident. They only knew because when they took the carpets up that they were already going to replace, they saw the stain at the bottom of the carpet. And I was like, It's one thing when a house nickels and dimes you because houses do. Home ownership is not for the faint of heart. But at least if we were to sell this house, we would get our money back at the very minimum, if not make a profit. Versus when you're renting, you put all this money into an apartment, and then at the end of the when it's all said and done on your lease, the landlord can absolutely withhold all that money that they took for you as a deposit for whatever reason. They could be like, you looked at the wall wrong, minus $200, and you're just like, and you're kind of a whole like at the whim of these landlords.
Yeah, I think it just goes back and forth again to it because, like, again, you could be a perfect landlord. You know what I mean? Like, in say you're holding a home or an apartment, and you have a tenant that just destroys that home. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not great carekeepers of everything. You know what I mean? They put a hole in the wall. You know what I mean? We had our answer with Gizmo, but we carpet cleaned that carpet like 5 times. You know what I mean? Like, we knew it happened. We tried to do our best. We tried to fix it. You know what I
It
mean?
didn't
Like,
leave a stain.
at the end of the day, if you're gonna look at the floor underneath it, you're gonna see that it happened. But again, it was poor timing. But like, I think it's again just how the relationship goes because that deposit and all that stuff's gonna, like, if you're thinking of a landlord, like, hey, I'm starting for the first time, and you know what I mean, like, this is my only house property. If it gets damaged, you know what I mean, like, that's an income that like I need. And just some tenant just destroys it. You know what I mean? Like, they don't take care of it. They let something happen to it, and you're stuck fixing it because you need to fix it and get it ready for the next tenant who you hope is going to be
Better.
great. You know what I mean? And so I think it's kind of like pick your poison because, like, even though like Lex mentioned, there's the fees for like getting the apartment. I can't remember, but I'm sure there was fees because we got lucky. But for like regular standard house buying, you have like your real estate agent, you have all these other things. You gotta have to put the paperwork for like the mortgage. Like, they just don't let you sign away on that. So I think it's like sometimes you have to choose your poison. And for apartments, yeah, you have to do firm as lease, but for regular house owning, especially if you don't have a USDA or first time homeowners, that's what, like 20% you have to put down or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I guess that's what makes us so like a unique case because like we only because like you're saying closing costs essentially.
yeah,
We only paid $153, so
yeah,
it's cost us less money to close on this house than it did to actually like just even apply for San Marin. But we got extremely lucky. Like,
yeah, we're not a regular case.
yeah, we caught Gerald right before it like really expanded. We did a USDA loan, which is a really good loan for those that don't have a lot of money up front, kind of thing. And no, you're right. Like, landlords do have a lot more liability at the end of the day, and that's kind of why they could be the way they are. I just think for one, like, it sucks when you're a renter. You're pretty much paying the cost of like the worst tenant. You know what
Sure.
I mean? Like, you have to pay because these big apartment complexes that are
Oh yeah.
300 to 500 units. You know what I mean? Like, how big does your profit margin have to be?
Yeah,
You know
is
what I
really
mean?
one unit getting trashed gonna like ruin your entire bottom line?
Yeah, or whatever. And so, like, I think it's, I don't know. It just, I understand why they don't have a lot of grace, but at the same time, when you're the good people that are actually like keeping up with your rent, like I wish there was a way to penalize more the people that were bad tenants than there were to like do an even like punishment across the board and then also get the good tenants.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it's like with the bigger apartments, it's kind of like a business. You're getting churned out. You know what I mean? Like, they really don't care. They're there for like that. But I think, yeah, then you have the other side of like your regular folks who are trying to do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Both parties can be good and awful to each other. The business one, they're like, at the end of the day, they're like, leave. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, it's not
You don't
you
like it,
not
you don't
being
gotta be
here.
here.
Sorry. You know what I mean? Like, we got there's a line of people that would love to be exactly where you like your
Mm-hmm.
unit. So if you want to be a problem, be a
Yeah,
problem. So.
that's very true. Very true.
Well, we're close to finish eating. This is again our first time doing this, so I appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We're gonna try to do it again. We have again, can't
A
remember how
lot
many
of.
are in this if you can't see it from all over there. But yeah, we'll figure it out, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. Let us know what you think about renting, and if we were out of pocket or if we're kind of on the right point. You know, everyone's got their own experience. You know,
Yes,
we
very
rented
true.
from a little tiny college town to a giant new upcoming city, and now we're homeowners. So our experience is probably gonna be a lot different than people who've never rented to people who've rented their entire life in different parts of the country and or world. So I'd love to hear what you think about it. But thanks for hanging out with us. Maybe we'll see you at next dinner.
Bye.